Recording in progress.
That should be our, our intro jingle.
Oh, recording in progress.
Yes, because we don't have
Yeah.
one. All of the,
Well,
all of
we
the.
have an intro sound effect which accompanies the wrench or the spanner turning the nut, but it's kind of
Uh,
abrasive because it sounds like it sounds like
not
it sounds
cracking.
like I've bent down to pick something up and I've ripped my pants, and that's
Oh my
that's
gosh.
the energy I'm bringing into the podcast.
That's hilarious. Full disclosure, my little errand was accompanying my partner to pick up a new whippersnipper. So let me know if you can hear it in the background.
I can't,
Okay, good. Because
but
it's
that
like,
does sadden me because I have a whippersnipper that I don't use because I pay someone to do whippersnipping, and I could have sold you the whippersnipper at for a really sweet
no,
price.
no way. What kind of whippersnipper do you have? Because we got like a
It's orange.
oh, so still could be still.
No, I don't think
Oh,
it's
oh,
still. I
all
think
right.
it's
No, it's
a
orange.
fancy. It's a some fancy name.
That is so funny. On a side note, the reason why we wanted to get it today, apart from the fact that we do need a good one, is because I am helping my son get his first little like cashier jobs.
Really?
So I posted, yeah, because I'm trying to motivate him to, not just get the boring old retail job. And like I'm like, what do you want to get paid $20 an hour or $15 an hour? Like kind of vibe. So and he's
Mm.
interested, he's keen. He's always been keen to kind of do something to make money. It's just kind of hard to get him to get those ideas out and actually do it. But yeah, so I posted in a local Facebook group and he got so many comments of like, yeah, just like, very like basically mowing lawns and
Mm.
whippersnippering. But our whippersnipper was broken, so we had to get another one. But yeah, so he's got his first book job tomorrow, which is just down the road, which I'm really excited for him. Just to like get
So,
out.
you'll transport the lawnmower to his job, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, it's literally 5 minutes down the road. So I'm happy
Wow,
about
that's
that.
good.
Yeah. So that's exciting because he's, 16 this year. I mean, how old do you have to be in New South Wales to work? Because I'm in Queensland, I was
Mm.
14 and 9 months.
That's a good
They,
question.
they let
I,
you
I
do it early.
I do like how you've gently nudged him into,
Entrepreneurship.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they're also good experience because
Yeah.
nothing beats dealing with the public
Oh,
and
it's true.
fielding,
It is
insane
true.
requests.
It is true. Quick fact about me. Well, for one, I took a long time to finish my university degree, my first one, because I was so confused about what I wanted to do. So I changed about 3 or 4 times. Then I got pregnant, so I did some things part time. But anyway, all through my study life, into my post grad, my master's, I worked in liquor retail. So
Hmm.
I have a very strong base in people people management skills. It's a very interesting industry to work in.
Yeah, so did
But
you have
yeah,
to employ any conflict resolution skills?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, with RSA laws, and there's slight differences between states. But obviously, you can't serve um, customers who you thought were already inebriated. So yeah, there
Right.
were definitely times when that was the case and it was really obvious. It could be sometimes it was just the local drunk who'd pop over after the pub. And that was easy enough, but the store would generally be open till like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So, sometimes on a Saturday night or you know, yeah, generally Saturday, but sometimes a Friday night you would get that like yeah, inebriated person come in trying to buy, and then you're like, sorry, can't serve you. And underage, those like where it was really obvious that that person was buying for a minor, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's fun and games. Christmas time, always a joy when you work in retail. Always.
Yeah, many years ago, I used to work in a newsagent, and the shift I had, I was the only one there. I had to open up 5 in the morning, and I
Mm.
became quite adept at selling people cigarettes and getting them to spend money on lottery tickets. So yeah, gambling and smoking. I was a purveyor of both those vices.
I also worked in newsagents.
Okay.
That is so funny. I took a gap year and worked at newsagents. God, that was a really well done use of my time. But yeah, no, it was very interesting times retail. So I worked at Big W for while I
Okay.
was at school, and then I had a short stint at a news agency. I worked at the local grocer down like like a seven to I don't know what you call them, but in Queensland they were like 7 to 7s they were called. So they'd be open in the morning till the evening. It's just a little local grocery shop.
Mm.
My first job was at Hungry Jack's. I actually got two jobs at the same time. I got Hungry Jack's and Big W, and I didn't last long at Hungry Jack's because I was working at the Surface Paradise outlet, and that was just and it was 24 hours, so that was insane. So that was just too much for a 15-year-old. And then yeah, liquor retail for like over 10 years as a manager, and I did accounts. I did a whole bunch of stuff in there. So, and then voila, marketer.
Yeah, isn't it funny that society sort of looks down their nose at those jobs and we elevate, corporate life above everything, but it's those jobs where you learn so much, particularly dealing with different personalities. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think the
absolutely.
skills you learn in those jobs are they're hard to pick up
Yeah.
in a marketing job.
Well, yeah, I think again, oh, well, no, it's anywhere. It's just understanding how to work with different types of people too. I think that is a big learning curve. And if you've already got all of that experience, it becomes more about um like the new role, as opposed to the new role and working with new dynamics, the client relationship, all of that kind of stuff. It kind of does make it easier, the people side of the new job. Um, Definitely.
Yeah, one thing that stuck with me working in the newsagent was how angry some of the customers seemed.
Mm,
Particularly the ones coming in to buy cigarettes, coming in to buy their scratch ticket.
mm,
Um, Probably because they didn't want to be spending money on those things, but they couldn't stop. But,
mm.
that was interesting from an anthropological point of view that people can engage your services, but they're not happy about doing so.
Couldn't you say that about marketing agencies as well? Like, isn't that
Yeah, I think so. It's like, does anyone want to go to the dentist? No. Does anyone want to employ a marketing agency?
not necessarily,
Not
but they do.
necessarily. They do.
But they do. I've been served quite a few, I don't know, agency ads, and they've been quite funny because they're like basically personifying marketing agencies as the slang F boy, um, which defines, the guy who is just stuffing you around for women. And yeah, they're quite funny, it's just like they never want to talk
Oh,
about
so the
the
F
poor.
doesn't stand for fun. That stands for something else, does it?
Yes.
But F boy, please define that term. Okay, so someone who messes you about.
Basically, yeah, a guy that you can't trust.
Ah,
That the ones that girls can't resist but can't pin down. So, it was they're quite funny ads. Basically, I can't remember which agency it is. I'll make
so is
sure.
there an agency out there called the F boy agency? Is this
No,
no?
they're saying that they're not the F boy. Other
Ah,
agencies are. So it's quite interesting. They never want to talk about ROI was one of the points.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's quite a good ad. I'll have to find it and make sure I click the save the link next time I see it. But That's what
But,
it reminded
but
me
you
of.
know, if you're a massive multinational corporation and you're sick of ROI, maybe the F-boy agency is the way to go.
Maybe people need to define what ROI is
Yeah,
and what they're
actually,
actually trying to do
that
in the first
does
place.
that does remind me of something. But before we get into that,
Mm-hmm.
Kat, welcome to the fifth episode of Fix Your Feed,
Woohoo!
episode 5, coming to
Yay!
you from the top of
Oh, that's not
Centrepoint
working.
Tower in Sydney. No, that's not right.
Woo!
Coming to you from the Sydney Opera House. That's not right either. We could say anything,
We
particularly
could.
for the
Well,
audio, because no one would know
no.
where this podcast is coming from.
We could just, and then for the video, we could just like put it in the background. Next time we should film this in green screen so we could put anything behind us.
Yeah, because it's the fifth episode, I can actually share some momentous news. I've been keeping it to myself until now. Well, momentous is probably not the right term. It's actually sobering news. It's sad news. I just discovered that I only have 1,404 weeks left to live.
I gotta get a calculator. Is this the? Hang on a second. What's...
Now, I say that because you shared a post with me
Oh my gosh, that's scary.
that said something like if you're lucky, you've only got 4,000 weeks.
Well, yeah. So, what is the life expectancy in Australia for? I think it's 70s, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to
4,000
Google that.
weeks is like 76.9 years or something.
Oh no, we're 83.2 years in
Oh,
Australia.
okay. So I have slightly more than 1,404 weeks left. That's fine. That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know if that's
But yeah,
significant.
isn't that just sits real heavy, doesn't it, when you look at it like that? I mean, it puts it in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another one I think that I saw on Instagram very similar to that, where it's also comparing the amount of weeks or time that you have with your parents.
Oh,
So that's another sobering, I guess, fact of life. Particularly, for us, or for me, who's lost a parent recently, and also for my partner who actually is an expat, and so his parents live in the UK. So that's definitely, and I just recently spoke with a colleague of mine who's from the US, and he totally could empathize with that because it's something that him and his partner were grappling with as well. Luckily for him, he was able to negotiate because the company he's working for at the time was US based. So he was able to negotiate, some budget or as part of his salary packaging, flights back home once a year. But for example, my partner hasn't been to back to England for like I think close to a decade now.
all
So
right.
and for myself, I only went back. For those who don't realize, I was born in the Philippines. My mother's Filipino, and my parents have been living there for the last 8 years. But I hadn't even been back home to my country of birth for over 10 years as well. So and not even since my parents had moved there to live. My parents were coming here to visit us. So yeah, all very. So when everything gets busy, you just got to have that post-it note somewhere doing the countdown. You only have.
Yeah, I mean, you've gone granular because, I'm talking about my life, but now you're talking about, well, time with loved ones or people
Yes,
dear to you. That's like even less than
exactly.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's a it's a good one to, keep yourself grounded and to keep things in perspective. I think when you're going through all of the busy things in life, or the things that keep you busy, I should say. Yeah, it's important to keep that in mind. Take the holiday, you know, make sure you do prioritize that time with loved ones
Yeah.
when you do take the holiday.
Start a podcast. Jokes aside, even though that was sobering writing that down, how many weeks
Mm-hmm.
I have left. I don't have a terminal illness. I'm just human. Even though it was sobering, I didn't feel bad about it because I feel, based on our conversations, our past episodes, and the energy we've brought into 2024, I just feel good about the time ahead.
Yeah. And that's not to say we don't feel friction,
Mm.
because growth basically is feeling that friction of like, am I doing the right thing? This is challenging, I can't be bothered. But like obviously the converse of that is I'm bored, I'm unfulfilled, what am I doing? Um, and maybe what's worse is when you feel the friction and you're still bored and you're wondering what you're doing. So maybe that's a whole different level. But yeah, I don't know what point I was going to make with that, Tim.
Well, um, oh, an aside, I saw one of my favorite stand-up comedians Sunday night in Sydney, and it was
Asian guy.
what's that?
Was it the Asian guy?
An Asian guy. Oh,
Oh,
I don't,
no.
I don't like Asian comedians. No, he's jokes. No,
Edit.
Theo Von. He sort
Oh,
of
I
presents
thought
himself
oh,
as
Theo
white
Von.
trash, but he's
Uh,
funny. He's very funny. But what was interesting, it was a 3,000 seat capacity theatre. I
sorry, I
saw
thought
him I saw him Sunday night,
yeah.
but this was the third night in a row he played there and he'd sold out 3 nights. So that was 9,000 people in Sydney coming to see this guy. I didn't even know he was that popular in
Tim,
Sydney. Yeah.
he was the same guy. I just assumed he was Asian, my partner.
Ah,
He's
okay.
like, "Do you want to go see this guy?" I'm like, "Who is that?" And then I looked at the name and I thought he was Asian.
Well, us whiteys, we all look the same, don't we?
Oh my gosh.
That's funny.
Fail. Well, it's the tiniest thumbnail, so I couldn't really see it properly. So
Yeah,
anyway.
okay, fair enough.
So it was really good, worth it
Well,
then.
it was a 3,000 capacity seat theatre,
Mm.
full. I saw him on the third night, so he'd sold out 3 nights in a row in Sydney. So that's at least 9,000 people. But what was funny, well, his jokes were funny, but what was particularly funny to me is he would pull up a stool, sit down, and then look kind of perplexed between his bits, and he'd look off into the distance and he would say into the microphone, okay, what else is happening? What else have I got? And it was like he was just making it up as he went. And I thought that was kind of endearing because it didn't come across as polished, even though it was all
Mm.
very funny. So I just thought when we have a lull in the podcast, we could just go, okay, what else have we got? Because that seemed to work for a professional. Oh, yeah, I know. You were talking about friction, and earlier you were talking about F boys and F boy marketing agencies. Well, marketing agencies are going to experience friction because I saw that post. Maybe I saw it because you liked it from the CMO of Zapier, Kieran Flanagan, and
Yeah.
he shared a quote from Sam Altman, the
Mm-hmm.
OpenAI dude, and Sam Altman apparently said AI will handle 95% of marketing work done by agencies and creatives. That's a polarizing statement, but even if that's partially true, that's going to put agencies under pressure, isn't it? If a lot of their stuff is going to be automated.
Agencies, in-house, I really think I totally agree with that statement because I mean, I don't know. I've only worked in marketing, 10 years or so. But I definitely see in my experiences, a lot of the things that we do in marketing is very, it could easily be automated. And it's really just about how people set up their systems or how they even discuss, like whiteboard, let's say, for example, a lead experience. Like some people don't even take the time to do that when they for example, invest in a system, or whether it's a CRM or this or that. Yeah, for me, marketing is so broad, but also it's more than just about creativity and ads. It's also about marketing ops and like how all these systems come together, like how you run. It's so broad, and a lot of that is around tasks that could very easily be automated. Once you prompt that AI function or software piece, whatever it might be, in the right way, I could definitely see that happening. I don't know about you. I don't know if you agree or whether you think there's a caveat to the statement, but I definitely believe it.
Well, us creative types, we're triggered when we read something like that because our initial reaction is, well, no damn machine is going to replace me and my awe-inspiring creativity. But if I stop and think about a lot of the things I do, my desire is to actually spend more time on creativity, because so much of what I do is, as you were saying, is operational work. It's like,
Absolutely.
do this, then that, compile this, create this report. So, I mean, if the F boys, sorry, the marketing agencies are honest with themselves, they would see they are doing a lot of mechanical sort of tasks anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's true. Part of me doesn't want it to be true, but I know it's true. Like, I wrote an article for someone recently and I needed an SEO title, not in the actual article as it appeared, but
Mm.
in the metadata, and I wanted an SEO description. And I pulled up Microsoft Copilot and
Mm-hmm.
I wondered, could it do it? And I had the article open in the browser tab before hitting publish. And I said, please write an SEO title for this article. It did. And then I said, please write an SEO description, which it did. But then I only had 160 characters in the blogging software I was using for the description, and its description was too long. So I said, please write it again, but make it 160 characters. And it did. And I read it and it looked fine.
Mm. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And I wouldn't say, SEO people will hate me for saying this, I don't think that was a particularly creative thing that I'd handed uh, to generative AI, but it was something I needed to do, and it did it really fast. And I did get to spend more time on creative tasks, the opening
Mm.
paragraph, this graphic, the way I ended the article for the client. So, yeah, I think a lot of work is going to be done by these
Yeah.
tools. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I won't say his name, but I mean, in discussing the possibilities of AI, it's not even just about efficiency. Like for us, it could be, and that's, maybe phase one, but it's the most unimaginative way of using generative AI, essentially. It's not about just big companies, saving in full-time hours here or and costs there. And I think that kind of shows how limited the imagination can be when it comes to business, because of that ROI or returns aspect. You're balancing the profit and loss statement and all that kind of stuff. What actually limits the use of AI is essentially that very basic human thinking. It's only restricted by the way we apply the technology, because we're still at this point, whether you believe it's going to turn into that um Terminator 4, Terminator 5 movie come to life, like at this point we're still directing
There's only two Terminator movies, by the way. I don't know what this 4 and 5
it.
business is.
They tried
Yeah.
yeah, it's just how it's only limited by our own imaginations, essentially. So I think that's, and obviously there's, the positive and negative to that. So it's all very, it's such a basic statement, but it's probably not, it's more important not to focus on, that efficiencies, because those are obvious, but it's like, well, okay, well, where do we actually want to be spending most of our time? What's the high value aspect of it? And for you and for creatives, it's being able to have that time to focus on being creative and actually taking away that mental load. So that, I mean, for me, that's why I think I totally agree with it, because I've seen all different types of marketing teams and all different types of business, all sizes, from small startup or scale up, I should say, to enterprise. Like, there are just a lot of tasks that are just done because they've always done it before, and it's like, why is this actually even, why are we doing this? And I've had to ask that question quite a few times, and it's like, well, yeah, we've always done it is the answer. And it's so cliche, but it still happens. So for me, it's like, okay, well, how do we remove that mental load, or where we actually can be more efficient and effective at the same time, because we're able to actually put the effort where the most high value output could be the result, essentially.
Yeah, you've opened up a pretty interesting area for discussion, or a can of worms, as we like to
Mm,
say, because if you are then giving a task to software, generative AI, that is just a mechanically repetitive task, are you really suffering in any way? Because if it's your job to bring your imagination, your creativity to work, to the client, you're not diminishing that capacity by
mm,
offloading something manual or repetitive, are you? Like, why are we so afraid about that?
exactly. And I think, and then there's always going to be, oh, it's raining. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, it is raining. And it's so nice to have this change of weather. Anyway, back to the
Yeah, it's
story.
instead of it being like 200 degrees Celsius,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
really not an exaggeration.
It's really not an exaggeration. It's been awful. And it's already autumn. Anyways,
I know. Normally it's, oh, thank goodness March is here because all the
no.
hot weather is gone, but no.
Well,
No.
I distinctly remember the day I gave birth, which was April 12th, almost 6 years ago now. It was so humid and hot, maybe not mid 30s like it has been the last few weeks, but it was high 30s, and that was in April 6 years ago. So I think it does happen. We just forget.
You know what it is? It's all the background heat from all these massive data
Data
centers that are
centers,
being
yeah.
built because people like me are using generative AI all the time. And the only way for that to happen is to expand the footprint of these data centers and cook us all. But at least I'll be efficient.
I will say, and I know we interrupted at the last point. I will say that I've had this discussion many times as well. Like, well, technology, computer processor, etc., is always going to be faster, like at processing data, than what a human brain can do. But the expectation has been, and I guess in the business world too, is that it has made things easier, but the expectation has then risen because, oh, now you have this tool, you should be able to do something like 10 times faster in the same amount of time. So,
Mm.
and I just think it's the same, like it's just that really limited thinking. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah, that
just,
is limited, and that really bugs me, that thinking, because
oh, you
it's
have AI now, you can do
it's
twice
thinking
more.
like a machine.
Mm,
And I think that's wrong, because it's not that you can do 10 times more or you can do it 10 times faster.
mm,
It's you're offloading the things that were blocking your creativity. So it's not about being faster, it's about finally you have a space for creativity. You finally have a space for what makes you a human. that's what this development is saying to me. I know that it sounds esoteric, but I think a lot of companies having the time to tap into their talent, their imagination, and their creativity, they don't have that time when they're just grinding through tasks.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So that's really the thing. I mean, and a lot of that is the obviously the financial targets and responsibilities and things like that. And people are looking quarter by quarter. Yes, as a financial year, but they're not thinking as long term as they could be. And this reminds me actually of a post by my favorite David, who runs Exit 5 community. He wrote about for context, he runs a great B2B community membership, like with a membership. So he used to run it on Facebook, but he knew, after running it there for however long he had it on there, that it was time to elevate and actually run it like as a proper membership platform, so he could actually give more value to his community and his paying community as well. And he wrote that, to go forward, he had to move backwards because he knew that once he changed, that he would lose X amount of members. And I think it was something like, was it 100,000? It was in the thousands, and for a small business, that's quite a big deal.
By leaving Facebook.
By leaving Facebook and investing into another platform, which I believe is called Circle. It's a
Oh.
good experience. I'm part of the community. It's actually
Oh.
a
So
great
you
platform.
would recommend that?
Well, the point of the story was he took that loss, obviously, moving platforms for one. So the investment in time and doing that. And he lost revenue because those people who had come to Facebook had, like, I guess, openly said, we come here for this community, blah, 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 or maybe they decided not to pay. So he took that loss in that short period of time. But he said since then, he's actually gained that loss back already. So his point was sometimes you need to go backwards to go forwards. And I think that's just something, that you said about what you said really, that's what it reminded me of. We're always like, we're afraid to almost pause and stop. It's just like we just have to be doing something individually, and even like, when as an employee for the business, you have to like look like you're busy. And that's, I think that's part of it, you know what I mean? Like, it's not have taking the time to pause and really reflect on the goals. Like, what are you doing this for? Are we actually doing it the right way? Like, I mean, can we just create that buffer and space to actually properly optimize? I don't think many companies really do that. Or if they do, as an example, big companies with big budgets, they do these big offsites, like they take their teams to Thailand and do all that. But how do you actually then, and I guess, you know, if you do that at the start of the year or something, that is quite motivating. But then how do you then bottle that up and then keep continuing on, keeping that momentum in the bottle to align with that, that community feeling you had at that event. So
Yeah.
anyway,
So what you're describing is a community that's always there. It's always available. It's not limited to an offsite, an event, or one
yeah,
day a month.
yeah. Or like, if you want to do innovative thinking or something and you invest the time to do that, then don't make it a flash in a pan. Like, it's just so easy to be like, oh yeah, we're going to do this now. And either you have to have people own the change management piece in that. Because as humans, we just go back to our old habits. Like, it'll last maybe 1 or 2 months. Like, even for myself, like the last week, I've fallen off the bandwagon of getting up early. I'm still getting the sun, but like that time that I had while my family was away, my mornings don't look anything like haven't looked anything like that in the last week. Just because it's just once something, it's just too easy to go back into your old patterns. I'm not looking at my phone in the mornings as much, but I still do. Probably a lot more than I did in that week that I was really onto it. But yeah, that's just human nature. Unless you actually put the focus on managing the change, then your company culture, like the bits that you want to change, those habits that you want to change, they just go back to what they used to be, and you find that you haven't changed at
Yes.
all.
Yeah. And if the culture doesn't support that, making space for that, deep thinking or looking at doing things differently, when those days come around where, we're going to have an offsite, that almost it becomes like a piece of theater. It's like, oh
Mm.
yeah, we have to show up, we have to perform for this, tick the box, but then, we go back to the status quo once that's done.
Because you don't have time, because you still
That's
have all these
right.
commitments. Like, what if I spent half a day like deep thinking, what is deep thinking to me is probably going to be different deep thinking to you. For me, it's like taking, I don't know, external prompts, but then being able to like marry it into what I'm experiencing at like in my reality, and how to put that together. But how do you then, and let's writing it down on paper, for example, or doing diagrams, flowcharts, just like making my synapses fire. I don't even know if that's the right word, but anyway, make my brain fire to make those connections. But then at the end of the day, you've done 3 or 4 hours of that, and then what if your manager comes in and asks you, "Oh, what have you done today?" And like you've literally got like 5 pages of scribbles and
Mm,
10,000 tabs open. How and you're still trying to integrate this idea. You haven't yet got it on paper. What's your manager going to say? So you did nothing? And that would be if I'm stereotyping, that could be a very general kind of response to you saying I'm doing some deep thinking work, and that's how you would describe it. I don't know if I could be wrong, but I'm
no,
making some
you're not wrong.
generalizations here.
And
But
the tension or the friction between creativity and the act of managing is real and ever present, because creativity is a highly suspicious activity to the management brain, because how do you quantify it? I mean, if you have to write a headline or an EDM or an article, you can quantify that at the end
mm,
because you've delivered it and written it. But everything that feeds into the creation of that piece, it just does not easily map to a spreadsheet.
mm,
And it's like, oh, what? It took 3 hours to write these three tags or these three headlines. Well, yeah, it did. And here's
this
all
is why.
my here's all my notes.
Yeah. Again, just so that's the whole thing about looking at AI and looking at technology and what it can do for us. It's just the way that we approach, or humanity approaches it, for the most part, is very limited in imagination. And that's why people get so triggered by these statements of like, but if you really took stock of your day, and I mean, I would put my hand up to automating like quite a few tasks, even in my everyday life, that I don't want to think about anymore or do. Like, same for the families who can afford to get deep cleaning every fortnight. Like, there's just some things that you just don't have the bandwidth to take on anymore, because you're just at that point, that breaking point of like, I can't do any more than what I can do.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, overall, that's why I feel positive about it, because,
Mm.
remember that old cartoon? You probably don't, because it's a really old cartoon. The Jetsons, the
I
family that
remember the
lived in the future.
Jetsons, yes.
And it was the Jetsons' future. Everyone had flying cars. Everyone had a robot
And it
maid
was
or
like
house servant.
1990.
Yeah, it was like 1990. We we've been trained on popular culture and science fiction to expect a bright, shiny future. Okay, the future perhaps does not look bright and shiny, but there are these tools that can make our life easier. But now we have this resistance towards it. I mean, anything that can just reduce mind-numbing labor. I know I'm talking from a privileged position. This is all knowledge work, white collar work.
Mm.
You know, if I was an electrician or someone, I can't use generative AI to do my job. But, you know, a lot of work is office work, is sitting in front of a computer. So, yeah, why not? Why not make it easier?
Yeah, I
Maybe
agree.
we're just, you know, we have this tool, but like an ape, we're just staring at it and grunting, and we don't know quite what to do with it. And it's a screwdriver, but we're using the handle as a hammer. We haven't grasped the
Yeah.
dimensions of the tool yet.
I guess the converse to that, or the argument to that as well, and I've seen these in some articles. I think again, executive opinions, can't remember what company, she was female, but she was saying that the menial aspects of the job also help us to build the skills. So like back to our conversation about working in retail and like the basis of like, how that can really um influence the way that you manage your people relationships. It's like it's just the same thing when you're relying on AI to do some of these menial tasks, then you're not like there's always a point of like subconscious learning as well. So you're taking that away by relying on the generative AI tool. And it takes away from you honing your skills, essentially, your basic foundational skills. I don't know what vertical she was talking from, but that was her argument. So there's also that aspect as well. I guess our argument point of view around AI tools, and how easy it is now, I guess, for
Yeah,
students.
I mean, if you're endlessly generating text and you have no input into it, I can see. I agree with that argument. Like, if you're a poor writer, you're going to be an even worse writer. But, you know, for someone who likes to write or likes to create things, it's really seasoning or garnishing, or
Mm.
it's like, I'm not sure what this means. Like, you send your research assistant off to gather information. Yeah. I mean, this is part of being an adult, though, isn't it? It's like there has to be some degree of self-awareness or self-control.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Um,
I feel that before generative AI or ChatGPT blew up in,
November 2022.
yeah, I mean, it was around before then, but that was the version that everyone got excited about. I strongly felt that leading up to that, people who write online, it's a generalization. I'm saying most of the content I saw, it read like it was created by a machine anyway. People were already writing like robots. So it's not
Yeah,
like something changed because, you know, they were so embedded
SEO
in
practices.
yeah, SEO practices, press release language,
It
corporate narrative. You know,
wasn't
we're all
creative.
acting like a bunch of robots before it showed up anyway. And
Yeah,
you know what? The robot will write better.
you just blanked out for a minute then.
Ah, okay. I blanked out. I said something
About the
that the internet.
robot.
Yeah, so you know, a machine is going to write better as a machine than a human could. So why try and compete with that anyway?
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree.
Robots are better at being robots than humans, but we decided to be robots anyway before it showed up. That's what I'm trying to say.
I love that.
You know, sometimes I have these thoughts and they just feel laser sharp. And then when I try to communicate it, the path from my brain to my mouth, it all gets jumbled.
I feel that way about writing sometimes. I'm the type of person who talks in like super tangents, and people are just like, I have to explain how I got to that point in the conversation because they'll say something and I'll be silent for like, I don't know, 5 minutes, and then I'll blurt something out and they'll be like, "What? Where
Yeah.
did you get how did you get there?" I was like, and then I'll have to go back and explain it. So I feel you. I feel that pain.
Yeah, sometimes it's not clear what we actually think until we write it down. We have a feeling about what we think, but then
Mm,
when we make it concrete, it becomes clear. But the best writing tip I could ever share with anyone is just write everything down and
yeah.
don't edit.
Yeah, I love writing.
Even if the grammar's poor, even if you don't have time for punctuation, just write everything down. And it might seem like a mess, but then you go back and look at it, and then it's
Yeah.
the act of pruning. But if you're in the mind of uh, editing or carefully measuring what you're saying as you write, it's just so painful. Just blurt it all out.
You definitely need to switch that your writing and editing is totally different. And I found because I'm not a seasoned writer, like I've written a lot of short copy, so which is quite a different experience to writing like an article, for example. Yeah, having that switch of like writing and editing and not trying to write and edit at the same time, um, was definitely something that I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember this from uni days and writing those awful essays and article and whatever reports. But yeah, there's definitely something in that. I love writing by hand. I could never be a Notion person, and I think I've said this before. It just becomes another tab that's open to me, and then I forget or just it
It
just
doesn't
doesn't.
feel special.
No, I don't. I mean, I've seen a lot of big influencers use like Notion templates and this and that, but I'm like, I think that's great. Obviously, you still need whatever Google Docs, Asana, whatever it is, those tools help. But for me, it's really writing it down. It's just different. It's just deeper, I think.
Yeah, I like writing in a notebook. Although if I
Yes.
do write on screen first,
Mm.
I don't know why this is the case. One of my favorite things to write in is Windows Notepad. It has no
Oh,
it has no formatting.
that's so cool.
It's just plain text.
I haven't
I
had.
don't know. There's just something about it. I mean, why is that different from, say, opening Word? I don't know, but it feels
Just
diff
is.
it feels different.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
feels like raw text. And then, okay, maybe I'll paste it into Asana or wherever to polish it.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff I'm most proud of starts either as a scribbled note in my notebook and then a session in Microsoft Notepad.
That is so cool. Actually, I use because I have a MacBook. I used to do that with social copy. I would use
Right.
notes and similar thing. It's quite good, like to iterate that way. It was just a different experience than opening up a Word doc, whether it's Google Docs or Microsoft.
Yeah, I don't need italics. I don't need bold. I don't need hyperlinks. I don't need footnotes. I don't need superscript or subscript. Get all that malarkey away from me. Give me
What?
ASCII text. Okay, I'm nerding out now.
God, I love ASCII text. It's the best.
Since we're talking about tips,
Yes.
there was another post that you shared with me from someone called Hannah Larson.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's any relation to who wrote
Oh,
The
she's the
Girl with the
lead.
Dragon Tattoo? Was that Stig Larson? Anyway, Hannah Larson. I'm off on another one of my tangents. She said, don't take criticism from people you would never go to for advice. So yeah, I punched the air when I read that because
No, she is
I
great.
fist bumped the air. Um, yeah, I feel that deeply.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. And it's uh, like this is a yeah, it could definitely go down this because especially I just remember starting out and like when you're starting, even a new role or something like that, it's true. It's just like, you're trying to get feedback from people to refine and get better, but it's having that balance of who you like how much of that you take on because how like who knows you better than anyone else? Probably not that person in your workplace who you've just met and you've only been in that workplace for what, like 3 months. They're not going to know. They can only know as well how you portray yourself. So you have to be really like deliberate in how you position yourself when you're new in the workplace or new in any social setting. So yeah, I just love that. Why do you love it, Tim?
Well,
Punch you.
I have a lot to say about this because, well, you've already set the table
Mm.
when in the workplace, if there's a culture of feedback, which seems like a good thing, and perhaps that's formalized in something like a 360
Mm.
review, it never really sat well with me because if your peers are reviewing your performance, if there's something wrong with your performance and it shows up in a 360 review, well, it should have been addressed earlier. Like if I'm really shit at my job, uh, whoever I report to should bring that up with me. Like it just seems it seems like a piece of theatre to have that come out in a 360 review because if there's a performance issue, the company should address that early. And so if it's not a performance issue, but then I'm getting criticism from people who I normally wouldn't take advice from, which
Mm.
is what this post is saying, well, what's the point?
Exactly. Context is so important.
If I'm really good at a certain area, whether that's face to face with clients or taking a complex idea and simplifying it through my writing, and then someone is reviewing my performance who is just a shit writer. Like, why am I subject to that process? Well, I'm subject to that process because that's something that needs to be ticked off. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's just kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
I used to have this thing, I would say, this many years ago. Remember the movie Fight Club?
Yes.
I remember telling someone, because we were talking about fitness, health and fitness. And I just remember being annoyed and I said, yeah, I would never take any like health or fitness advice from a man that didn't look like Tyler Durden. And that's a provocative statement, but it's sort of true because you
Yeah.
you want feedback. Maybe even criticism is always hard to take, but you want information from people who are at the top of their game.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of offensive to get that from people who, don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. So what would you recommend then as a more effective way of delivering feedback to your team as an example? Or even I guess what would make more sense or impact to you?
Well, rather than have a bunch of arbitrary scores like, what's my score out of 10 for this? What's my score out of 10 for that? Is actually to take an example of something I've done well, or perhaps something I haven't done well, and talk to the work rather than
Mm.
just have abstract values assigned to things like collaboration, communication. Like
Mm.
actually get to the meat of the matter, which is the work.
Mm.
Yeah. Talk about the game, not the player.
Hate the player. Oh,
Does
wait,
that make
hate the
sense?
game, not the player. It No, it does. So give me like an example of like, for example, if you're meant to And it's all very political as
Oh
well,
yeah,
because
it's
at the end of the
deeply
day,
political.
yeah, HR is not there to help you. It's there to help the company, right?
No,
Like
that's right.
if you do have an HR company, as an example.
They're meant to help the company. They're not meant to help you.
Exactly. Well, do you know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
like it's not a linkage. Just like no, they're not solely for employee experience or whatever it is they like to tell you. Um, so you like in terms of highlighting what you didn't do well, like unless you really feel safe in that's in the space or really like you're not really just gonna say
Yeah, I
oh,
mean,
it's like when
using
you
the
go
word,
into a job interview and they're like, oh, what's your weakest strength? And you say something like, oh, I'm a perfectionist or I work too hard or so you know what I mean?
yeah, I know. What are they
Yeah,
expecting you to say with that question?
I don't know. Um, yeah, so it's like, okay, well, if you
Oh, my
focus on the
weakness,
game
I'm prone to violent outbursts when I don't get my way or if the coffee machine is malfunctioning.
or
But
if I
apart
smell
from that, I'm all good.
BS and it's yeah, so I guess when you focus on the
I
game.
remember, right? Okay. I remember I asked someone who was reporting to me to write an article for a client, and what they delivered, it really waffled. I couldn't identify what the point of the article was. It had a whole bunch of things wrong with it. But I took the article before I met with them and I marked it up and I just talked through the article section by section. And it's like, oh, see where you wrote this? You know, that's interesting. That's an interesting piece of information to develop, but we could expand it. And so rather than it be a list of criticism, I basically created a roadmap for them to make it better. So I didn't rewrite the article. I simply noted all my observations, but I didn't email it to them and say, do better. I actually sat down with them. Well, this was before
Mm,
COVID. This is an example of where office work is better than
in
remote
person.
work
Mm.
because I just sat down with them and they thanked me afterwards, even though I'd basically pulled everything apart that they wrote. But I made it a safe space.
Yeah,
It wasn't like do better, I'm unhappy. It was like this is how you can make it better.
yeah.
And I was able to do that from experience. But why I'm bristling about this, can you see my hair's bristling? Um, don't take criticism from people you would never go to for advice. Conversely, it couldn't have worked, not because I'm better than the person I was coaching. It's just they didn't have as much experience as me. That's all it was.
Mm,
But,
yeah.
you know, democracy is the highest ideal of human civilization. But in business, is everybody's opinion equal? I don't know.
Mm, that is true. And it's yeah, it's that not like for like, but you have to have that level of being on par.
Mm.
Yeah. Like it's like taking feedback from the intern. I guess the value in that would be how you are treating or projecting or managing somebody that junior and like getting their perception of like how you're managing them. I guess that's the value. So really it probably depends again on the context of what they're asking you. Like it it should be something like if an intern is like, it's not the same set of questions because you'd ask something like, as a leader, how has Tim helped you to learn more in XYZ and those three KPIs that like as an intern they're coming to you to learn like let's simple it down to three basic professional responsibilities, and then you marry it to that. But yeah, so I agree, like the vague and also one size fits all questions probably not the best way to go, because then yeah, it's literally like ticking a box.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember at the heart of a lot of these ideas, such as, 360 feedback, there's something good at the core of it. But as
Mm.
you're saying, because it becomes a box ticking exercise, we've sort of lost sight of the substance of it. Feedback isn't about, you know, everyone can give you feedback, because what if you're not working with that person?
Mm. Exactly. Exactly. And then you get actually, yeah, and then you get marked down because that person hasn't seen any of your work. Well, it's like, well, I don't get the opportunity to show you my work.
Yeah, like
So
cat from accounts thinks I'm kind of flaky, or my work isn't up to par, but she hasn't read it.
exactly. Or you get, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. What for me, it's like it's also hiding behind like feedback in that way. I know that people need to feel safe in giving and receiving feedback, but if it's not something that you would say someone personally, then like there's an issue there that you can't openly say to somebody, hey, do you know, like, you know what, Tim, what do you think about me doing this? And you can't give like an honest opinion. That says a lot more about your culture than it says about your process, like your box ticking process. You should have the right team dynamics where you can be open to providing feedback. If like have the candor in conversation. Like, why do you need to
Yeah.
wait for that piece of paper? Like, why can't you just talk
I,
about
I
it?
also think, I know this is probably not the case for everyone, but
Mm,
people who are high performers, what they secretly want is to be in an environment of other high performers, because that's going to challenge them and make them feel uncomfortable. But that's
yeah.
also going to take them to an even higher level.
Oh yeah. I
Game recognizing game.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think for me that's particularly at this time of our career, we've got a few years on the board. I think that's definitely something that I look for, not being the smartest person in the room, but for a skill that I value. Like you have to value it, otherwise, just if you didn't care about investment banking and you're working with an investment banker, you're never gonna value that time that you have with that person. So yeah, no, I really love that ideal of learning being in that high performing team.
Yeah. And so if you perceive at some level that the criticism or feedback that's coming to you is, you know, coming from a mediocre source, or it's coming from a culture of mediocrity, heaven forbid, it's just not going to sit well.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should end the podcast with a picture of the post. And I'd love to hear
Ah, yes,
um
I'll edit it in with the magic of editing.
yeah, but I'd love to hear um as part of like guest questions. That would be like maybe we have two or three that we ask every single guest no matter what, and that would be one of them.
This could be the first question. Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, because it's true. I don't know if, for me, like a self-confidence thing as well. You just really have to have a self-awareness and b just like the perspective to be like, mm, does that person's opinion of me and what I did really matter? I mean, you can always adjust what you did and what you said, like the next time, what you learned from it. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have said it this way, for example, because
Mm.
that's how it was perceived by another person. I could have done that better. But it's like, just got to take some things as a grain of salt. It's just like,
Yeah,
hey,
and anyone in a healthy relationship with their significant other,
mm,
they're already having to do that work anyway, with the way they communicate to another person without, upsetting or inflaming the
yeah,
other person. So, that is the work of being a human, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've come full circle,
Yeah, we have.
and it's been an hour-ish.
Yeah. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you, Timbo.
Thank you, listeners. Until next time.